Hello and welcome to the 18th edition of the LoJoWo podcast. I'm recording this episode on the evening of Thursday, September 24th. So right after that really bad, painful loss to the Lakers in Game 4 to put the Lakers up 3-1. And, you know, my main complaint with the last game in Game 3 was, Jokic wasn't being aggressive enough, and you'll hear that soon. I have the episode that I recorded, that I haven't gotten out yet, will be attached to this little intro part that I'm just going to be recording for the reaction to the game that just happened. Everything that you'll hear later on is before this game happened, so I guess just keep that in mind. But yeah, Jokic was looking more aggressive at times. I don't know. He wasn't shooting great, but I feel like there's just another level that he can be producing at. Jokic. I think what Jokic is giving us is what we need, but it'd be if he could just go like a step or two further. I feel like he has that. Maybe he's just tired. Also, he'd been playing with foul trouble. Sitting with foul trouble, really. And that was, I think, one of the biggest differences. He didn't get very many minutes this game because of foul trouble. And I don't know why we took him out even in the fourth quarter. Like, to me, you're trying to avoid having him get a sixth foul, possibly, and be, fouled out. And the reason why you want to avoid that is because the result of that would be him not being able to play. But you're avoiding that by just not having him play. So I know the last couple minutes might be more valuable than the minutes leading up to it, maybe. That might be more of an illusion than it is really truth, but I just feel like if we would have kept Jokic in, probably would have been a little bit better in our favor. But I guess both teams played really well. We were hitting our shots all game, but way too many offensive rebounds were given up to the Lakers. I think it was 25-4 in second chance points. The Lakers scored 25 points off second chance opportunities, and the Nuggets scored 4. So that's not what you want to see. Anthony Davis came out of the block aggressive and on fire, really. Jamal Murray put together a really nice game, was making lots of crazy stuff down the stretch, but it just wasn't enough. Yeah, kind of bummed out about that game. And I still feel like, Millsap only played 16 minutes this game apparently, but I still feel like we can get more minutes to Porter. Plumlee was in there for some reason for 13 minutes. I didn't really think we needed Plumlee in there. Really wasn't providing too much. MPJ had another really solid game. 13 points, 8 rebounds, 5 of 8 in 20 minutes. And he's being patient too. There was a couple possessions where he got the ball, and I could tell, he's looking to score. And when he has that demeanor, I am just very confident that he in his ability that he's going to score. He hit some really big shots. Just so happens that they weren't in crunch time because we didn't have him in crunch time. So, except for on that final possession, but he was just standing in the corner and we weren't using him because drawing up the play for Jamal Murray, obviously, which, it's one of the final shots. You obviously want to go to that, but I'd like to see MPJ get more opportunities. He's had one shot in the last minute of a game in the postseason so far, and he nailed that 3 right in, I think, Paul George's face, somebody's face. But, yeah. MPJ is really special offensively, and he has been looking better all around, basically every game. So I would still, I guess, petition Michael Malone to play more MPJ, but I guess we'll see what happens. Pretty disappointed after that one, but down 3-1. We've been here before. Obviously, 3 of our last 4 series have been 3-1. And, Nuggets have to go 7. So I'm calling it. We're going to go 7. I believe in it. Not saying we're going to win, but I say that there's going to be a Game 7. Just because, this Nuggets team has yet to not be in a Game 7 in the past 2 seasons. Well, a Jokic-led team has yet to be not in a Game 7. So, I think that's really it that I wanted to talk about with this game. Jeremy Grant came out aggressive and had another really good game. Been liking what I've seen from him. Monte Morris played well. Jamal Murray, obviously, 32 and 8. I'm really excited for Jamal Murray and his future with our team. But, just couldn't get it together tonight. LeBron had 26, 9, and 8 on 7 of 18. Dwight was 12 and 11. Dwight was way too good this game. Playing really well, getting tons of offensive rebounds and putbacks and all that kind of stuff. KCP had another really solid game. Rondo had a good game, 11, 5, and 7. He passed Scottie Pippen on the all-time assist leaders in the playoffs. And Kuzma even had a little bit of a moment too. So, like I said, disappointed, but you'll probably hear my intro again, just because, I think I'm just going to leave it in there. But I'll let you guys go to the full episode that I recorded the other day, or actually earlier today. But hello and welcome to the 18th edition of the LoJoWo podcast. I'm recording this episode on Thursday, September 24th. So the day after that Miami and Boston game that put Miami up 3-1. It was a very tremendous game. Really, ever since the final 5 minutes of the third quarter. Before that, it was pretty ugly. Both teams were missing a lot of shots, really low field goal percentage, kind of not moving the ball very well. Both teams just looked a little off. Jason Tatum had 0 points in the first half. Just didn't really look himself, wasn't very explosive and active. In the second half, though, he more than made up for it. He had 28 points, which is very good. It just so happened to be, along with another half that he went scoreless. So, but he had 28 points, 9 rebounds. Overall, not a bad game at all. He ended with 10 for 22. So it's a good thing, he didn't really overshoot in the first half. He was only 0 for 6. But like I said, he just wasn't really playing like himself, wasn't playing aggressive, and just wasn't really, speedy and bouncy the way he usually is, being explosive. But obviously the main takeaway from this game is obviously going to be Tyler Hero. He went off for 37 points and was completely red hot on fire for really, that second half and late third quarter and for the fourth quarter. But he caught fire early in his minutes when he got in the second half, or in the second quarter. I think he had 15 at the half. So he had a really good game. And I think a game that a lot of people knew he was capable of. Maybe not in the Eastern Conference Finals. I feel like people probably wouldn't have predicted that. But he's a really special player. He's built for the moment. He's just built really confidently. That's for sure. And he ended with, 37 points. Like I said, 14 for 21 shooting. And apparently the only player to score more points than that at his age in a playoff game was Magic Johnson. in the 1980 finals, in that game where he had 42 and started at center with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar being injured, and really won them the championship in that game. So, yeah, very legendary game for Tyler Hero. I think the person that he bumped back to third on that list is Derrick Rose from 2009, which was also against the Celtics in Derrick Rose's rookie season in the playoffs. So that was really cool. But yeah, so Tyler Hero was just, really showed out. I think this is really what's going to be remembered as his coming out party. But obviously, I think everybody knew that he was capable of it. Like I said, he's a really fun player to watch just because he's so, I would call him like sneaky explosive. He's so springy. Like everywhere he goes, he's just so, he's always on his toes. You could watch him in most games, like even on the defensive end. He's always just kind of bouncing back and forth on his toes, like ready to go either direction. And I just really like that about him. It's really just fun to watch a player like that who's always engaged. And he's doing that off ball as well on offense. And it's a really nice wrinkle for the Miami offense to have a guy moving off ball like that and with the ball in his hands being so shifty, in which like he's kind of always shifting his momentum from left to right and really can go either way. And, also his jump shot just looks so springy too. Like his legs kind of, I would say they kind of flop down, kind of like they look like a frog jumping when he shoots a three. It's just like, I don't know, maybe somebody can find something, but I don't know of anybody else that has like a shot that really looks like his from like on the lower base of it. Just looks really funky, but it also just looks really pure too at the same time. So that's really cool. I think a nickname for Tyler Hero, which he probably has a few now. Like obviously his last name is almost a nickname in and of itself, but I think a lot of people call him Hero Ball and stuff. But I feel like honestly, Jamal Murray's nickname, the Blue Arrow, which I guess I don't know if people really even know that outside of Denver fans and some like people who really follow basketball, but because it's usually like Nuggets broadcasters that call him the Blue Arrow. But Jamal got that nickname from like when he hits threes, he does like the celebration where he'll like pull an arrow out of his quiver and like shoot it, like a bow. Is really where he got that name. And obviously Denver's jersey colors being primarily blue, so he's the Blue Arrow. But I think honestly we kind of used that nickname too soon, just a tad bit too soon, because I feel like the arrow really works with Tyler Hero. I think like the Red Arrow would be a really good nickname for him, just because like stylistically as well. Like he just reminds me like that's what like the nickname that the way he plays invokes in my mind. Just kind of like lightweight and always just being so springy and like just kind of shooting and darting across like through open spaces in between defenders and stuff like that. Just kind of reminds me of like an arrow. I feel like, and obviously the Heat being red, Red Arrow would be a really cool nickname for him. And, they're both Kentucky guards, and if possibly wishful thinking, they face each other in the NBA Finals, that would be a cool rivalry too, and they could be like a Red Arrow versus Blue Arrow type of thing that could happen in the future. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's just too cheesy, but honestly, I think that's a really cool nickname for him. And I would like to see it catch on, but it'd probably have to take somebody with a little bit more credibility or credentials than I do to really get that going, but I can try. So yeah, a really good game from Tyler Hero. Jimmy Butler had a pretty good game. While I was watching it, like shooting wise, it looked pretty poor for most of the game. Was really missing. I think he just had a stretch where he missed quite a few in a row, but he ended up with 24 points, 8 for 20. So numbers actually don't look bad at all. He had 9 rebounds, 3 assists, but he really made a couple really big ones in the last couple minutes or so. So that's really kind of what Jimmy likes to do, is be quiet scoring wise for a lot of the game and kind of just show up at the end, because he does everything else so well. He doesn't really need to score throughout the game, but he can when he needs to. But yeah, I would call that a pretty good Jimmy game. Nothing special, but like, for as far as Jimmy's standards go. Yeah, and then Dragic had also a pretty okay game as well for himself. As far as what par is for him in these playoffs, he had 22 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals. He was 8 for 22. So yeah, like not too shabby. Had the scoring numbers. His efficiency was a little lower than you'd like, but like not bad at all. And then Jaylen Brown had 21 points, 9 rebounds, 8 for 14 from the field. He had a really good game, and he's had a really good past 2 games now. He was amazing last game. Like multiple times, I just kind of glanced up at my screen, and he was getting a breakaway dunk off of a steal. It just seemed like he did that repeatedly. He had just a really good game after that blow up in the locker room that him and Smart had. So that's good to see. And I'm still surprised and kind of disappointed that he got so many fewer all defensive team votes than Jason Tatum did. Jason Tatum's a good two-way player too, for sure. And he saw it on the defensive end as well, but I think Brown is a bit more, like, defensive end is just more of his specialty, and Tatum's specialty is more the offensive end. And so, yeah, I just feel like if you're going to vote, give somebody on the Celtics all defensive team votes other than Smart, obviously. I think it probably should be to Brown, but that's just me. Bam had a really good game too. He had 20 points, 12 rebounds, 4 assists. His arm injury is pretty concerning. How Jason Tatum kind of pulled it across his body a little bit, like nothing too egregious or anything, but seemed like something all throughout his arm, like from his shoulder to like the inside of his elbow all the way down to his wrist is really where the places that he was kind of grimacing at. Seemed like it hurt him pretty badly. Also, I can't help to think that that's the same arm he used to stuff Jason Tatum in Game 1 in overtime for that game-winning block that was like denied the dunk as well as like physics with his arm. How it was just completely cocked back behind his body, and his wrist was bent down like basically into the cylinder to stop the ball from going in. I can't help but think that they're probably linked, but I guess who knows with that. We'll see what that injury really looks like and what it really is. He wasn't allowing any like trainers to approach him during the game because that happened pretty late in the game, but he just wanted to stay in. He didn't want any trainers to come up to him, so so they didn't do anything during the game, but so we'll have to find out later. But I haven't heard any updates about it. There might be one that I'm just missing, but yeah. Kemba had a pretty good game too. He had 20 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists. He was 6 for 14. Kemba really hasn't looked too much like himself in these playoffs really so far. He's had a few good Kemba games, but he's been kind of singled out and targeted by a lot of playoff defenses so far. And so I think Celtics really need him to provide a little bit more if they're wanting to make a comeback in this series. But yeah. And then the rest of the guys, those were really the main impact guys. Like Duncan Robinson, he's been in foul trouble this whole series. It seems like he's had 4 last night. There's 2 games back to back. I think it was game 1 and 2, or maybe 2 and 3, where he had 3 fouls in his first 3 minutes on the floor, which is really not what you want to see. I think the Celtics are really targeting him, like not allowing him to get any shots off at all, really, and then just getting him into foul trouble, attacking him defensively, because Duncan Robinson isn't any pushover on the defensive end, but with as good of a defense that Miami has, individual defenders, he's usually the weakest link that's on the court for them to attack and exploit. And if they attack him aggressively, they're going to get him to pick up fouls. And him being their best shooter, it's a big factor to take out of the game. So I really think that's been the approach for the Celtics so far this series, is attack him, defensively, and then also like get in his grill. Don't allow him to take a shot and just play him off the floor, basically. And they've been doing a really good job of that. But yeah. So Duncan, I really like him as a shooter. He's one of the best in the NBA. He was top 3, I think, in percentage this year. I think he's going to have a place in this league for a long time, and especially with this team, the Heat. And, what I hear some broadcasters say, actually, just talk about him like as if he's like a Kyle Korver or somebody that's just like a three-point shooter, when he's very different than that. He has like other things, other parts of his game that are like really nice that you wouldn't expect. It just so happens he's a very, very good three-point shooter, and people just think of him as like a Kyle Korver, like just like somebody you throw in there to just get open shots or, hit down tough three-pointers, and that's really it. That is basically his primary shot diet, like only shot diet he really has, is shooting threes. He'll get a few if there's a wide open lane, or in transition, like you'll get layups or something, but typically he's going to be going for threes. And, but other than that, he's also a pretty good passer. So, and him and Bam in those handoff actions where they kind of turn it into, it's like half handoff sequence and half like pick and roll, where you're either going to get a Duncan 3 or Bam rolling to the rim, and then Bam can either finish inside like he's great at doing, or being the facilitator that Bam Adebayo is, can play make in the short roll. That's a really nice play that they use a lot, but that's really where they've been keying so closely on Duncan Robinson this series. I think that's the sequence, the game scheme, the offense that they've been preparing for the most in Boston, and just attaching Marcus Smart to Duncan Robinson's like shooting space and not allowing him to like even get up a shot without being completely bothered. So they've been doing a really good job of that. They've kind of just taken that out of the series. They're focused so closely on that, Miami's been able to beat them other ways. So, for casual fans watching and hearing like, oh, this Duncan Robinson guy is supposed to be one of the best shooters in the NBA. He's not looking good this series. He's not having good games or whatever. It's like he's so good of a shooter that they're paying way, way more attention to him than anything else while he's in there. And that's why you're seeing him not have a very good series, is because that's how good of a shooter he is that's the reason they're paying that close, tight defense on him. But yeah, and that's another thing with just casual fans. I don't want to act like, I don't want to speak down to anybody, but I don't like it when people just come out of not watching basketball at all season, and then they kind of show up. Like even most of the playoffs, they only show up like in the conference finals is really where a lot of them show up, and they're like, oh, let's watch basketball now. And they like to make statements and declarations about things that they think they know what they're talking about. And a lot of times they're just not correct, and they're using really confirmation bias, because they're like, oh, they come in with this idea, and they see this thing happen repeatedly in a playoff series because of schemes, because of like the way teams are scheming against each other. You're going to see things happen repeatedly because those are game plans. And if you see those things happening to this one player, like you'll think that's normal, or that happens like all year long, or that's like the way that player usually behaves, or something like that. Most things in playoff series, there's a lot of examples of this, where players run into things they haven't seen in their career before, like used against them. So they act very differently than they have been all year long. So really watching playoff basketball, a lot of times you're not going to see what a player really behaves and plays like. especially when they're such a good player that they like the better the player is, the more attention they receive in those types of ways. Really depends on the coach and team they're going up against, but yeah, there's just that. Number one, people just basing their opinions off of things they see there and highlights they see. I don't know, stuff like that. I mean, that's really the main thing. Like one thing I've just noticed is a lot of people that I've talked to, like even some of my friends or other just people that don't really pay attention to basketball the whole year, and then they are now, just because it's more important right now. But they'll say things like they think the Celtics are going to be the better matchup against the Lakers in the finals, rather than the Heat or something like that, or talking about how, or even saying that that's like a big difference, saying that it's like obviously the Celtics would be way better against obviously the Celtics would be way better against the Lakers than the Heat would be, and things like that, kind of disregarding the Heat, saying that they don't really have much and stuff like that. When it's like, if you haven't watched the NBA all year long, you wouldn't know this, but the Heat are a really, really good team. They're not here by accident. I think a lot of casual fans that like tuning into the playoffs might see them, how they made it here, and see that 5 next to their name on the scoreboard, and be like, oh, so they're just like this cute 5 seed team that's on this Cinderella story making it here to the conference finals, when that's not the case. They are that good of a team. They're a conference final caliber. They're a championship contender. That's how good of a team this Miami team is, and they've really been that most of the season. Really, like from the start of the season, that's when after the first couple weeks, when all those questions started happening, it was like, are the Heat a championship contender? Because at the beginning of the season, coming into it, nobody really thought that about them. Coming into the season, like that, the ceiling of them really was that cute 5 seed team. That's what people thought they would probably turn into, or become, like at their ceiling in this Eastern Conference. But they've really become like an upper echelon contender in the East for sure. And going up against the Bucks, plenty of people were picking the Heat over the Bucks. That wasn't an uncommon opinion. I personally picked the Heat over the Bucks when they started their series together, just because matchup wise, and even if you're just looking at which team is better, the Bucks really aren't that much better than the Heat. The Heat's record, the Heat's a lot better than their record says. Really, just because all season long they struggled with a lot of players coming in and out of lineups, just because a lot of people were struggling with injuries at different times, and they had some roster movement. They had a big trade at the deadline for Iguodala and Jay Crowder, and getting those guys integrated with big roles and lots of minutes was tough on them for a while. And also they had a pretty hard schedule then too, and Butler missed some time. I'm pretty sure Hero and Duncan Robinson also were injured for a while. Kendrick Nunn was definitely injured for quite a while. Not quite a while, but for a few games. But that's really where some of those losses started piling up. And if you look at the wins and losses column, they are a 5 seed, but they're not far behind like Toronto, who is the 2nd seed. They're not too far behind them in win-loss record. Just so happens they're pretty tight in there, all those teams. And Indiana wasn't some bum team that they upset in the first round. Indiana's a nice squad as well. I think most people would agree Miami was a better team all year long. Miami should probably be coming into this more of like the 3rd seed, maybe 4th. They're on the same level as the Raptors and Celtics. Like those 3 teams, it was really Bucks 1 just because of how ridiculous of a regular season they had. And then 2nd, 3rd, 4th seed could be really switched around anyway between Celtics, Raptors, and Heat. I think most people would probably agree with that. And Indiana and Philly were really the next ones, and those were the only teams that mattered in the Eastern Conference playoffs. Sorry to any Orlando or Brooklyn fans out there, but you guys didn't really belong in the playoffs this year. Clearly. But, Indiana struggled so much first round because Sabonis, who was their best player all season long, was out with a injury. I don't remember what it was. I think it was a knee injury. But and then obviously the Sixers, Ben Simmons had what I'm pretty sure was also a knee injury, who was their second best player. He was out. And also the Sixers were kind of jumbled all season long. They were a really talented team. They just didn't really have the best chemistry and roster fit. So, but yeah. So I guess in conclusion, the Heat's a super good team. People just don't know how good Jimmy Butler really is because he's not like a superstar scorer and that level of player. He's definitely a top 15 player in the league. This year he's probably maybe even pushing top 10. But he's like a superstar who does all like the intangibles. He's like a Kyle Lowry or Chris Paul type of thing. Does like all the little things on the court besides just scoring and obvious things. But he's a big 6'8", guard forward, wing guy. So he has a lot more things that he can do on the floor than 6'2" Kyle Lowry or whatever he is, and 6 foot Chris Paul. So, but yeah, Jimmy Butler is a guy who can, like I said before, I'm pretty sure I just talked about that, how he can score really at any time down the stretch from the mid range, and he can also get to the rim pretty easily too. But he's a really good defensive player, a really nice playmaker. He's a primary ball handler. Really, this postseason, him and Dragic have been the primary ball handlers, except for when Hero's in there. Hero does a lot of ball handling too. They do have a lot of that. Like those three guys are really the guys that put the ball on the floor the most. Bam Adebayo probably being the fourth. Those are really their playmakers. And I guess if you want to include Iguodala, who plays sparse minutes, but those are their playmakers right there, and they have a lot of them. That's more playmakers than most teams have. And it just so happens all of those guys are really good defensively too. Like Tyler Hero, most people probably think he's a weak link on the defensive end. He just has the heart and the energy to be a great defender, and he is just because of effort. He's a great, and really also because the team he's on, having other really solid defenders around him, it's probably easier to be a better defender. But yeah, Tyler Hero's not afraid of the moment, that's for sure, as we saw last night. But yeah, Bam Adebayo is a really good playmaker. Really, especially for his size. He's one of the best playmaking bigs in the NBA. Obviously, Jokic being the first, but Bam is a different kind of playmaker than Jokic, I would say. Maybe not though. I guess they're pretty similar. Less flashy passes. Jokic is much more flashy. Bam Adebayo, more like just like the solid like bounce passes and swing it over the corner and things like that. And Bam Adebayo is much quicker and more athletic and can go downhill at you, drive to the rim, that kind of stuff. Has a nice little mid-range game that's like 7 to 10 feet away from the basket, which is a really weird range. A lot of people don't shoot jump shots from there, but he has been, especially this postseason, and he's been making them pretty well. So, but yeah, this Heat team's really good. That's really all I got to say about that. But also just kind of piggybacking off of like the conversation about casual fans. Another thing that people just tuning into the playoffs might be seeing is like, oh, Jamal Murray is like crazy good, and like I don't know, all these things, like why don't I hear about him before? That's because he averaged 18.5 points per game during the regular season, and most of the season was probably the third best player on the Nuggets, behind Will Barton and Nikola Jokic, being 2 and 1 respectively. But yeah, he's really elevated his game in these playoffs. Really proved me wrong, because at the beginning of this playoffs, this is what I talked about, him being such a streaky guy that shows up in some moments, is completely gone in others. I would like to see that change, and it has. This postseason, he has been pretty solid. Almost every game, giving a lot. So he's been nice and consistent. Not as consistent as Jokic, but Jokic is really one of the most consistent guys out there. Really gives you, most games is definitely between like 15 to 30 points a game, with, can get a triple-double on literally any night. So, he's a really good contributor this postseason. He's been having good series every series so far. People in that Clippers series, when he had that 34, 14, and 7, I saw some people online saying, like, finally Jokic had a good game or something like that. When it's like, Jokic has had good games this whole playoffs. Like, he averaged like 26 points in the first round. I don't understand what people have been watching. Jokic, like, obviously Jamal Murray was having the 40 and 50 bombs, but that was just because of the drop pick and roll coverage that they were playing. Like, that was the easier shots to get. That's why those were happening. And Jokic was being guarded by Gobert. Like, it's like a matchup and circumstances that really kind of made that series what it was. Like, Jamal Murray is one of the best scorers in the league right now. So I'm not saying that, like, he's not as good at scoring as Jokic or anything like that. I'm just saying that just because Jamal Murray was having crazy nights, that doesn't mean Jokic wasn't doing anything. He was getting like 26 points and 10 rebounds and 6 assists like he always does. So, yeah, he's having a really good series. Last night, or 2 nights ago now, he did not have a very good game. He was 22, 10, and 5, which, just looking at that, that's not bad at all. But he was 9 for 14, and was not taking shots when he should have been. I don't understand this. This is really Jokic's biggest weakness on the offensive end of the floor, is that he is too unselfish sometimes, or not aggressive enough scoring the basketball. Too often, he'll catch the ball and obviously be looking for the pass first, which sometimes he just needs to not do that. There's multiple times last night where he was being guarded by Rajon Rondo, 6'3", against 7'2", 270, whatever he is, Nikola Jokic. Jokic, we just saw in Game 2, back down Anthony Davis straight to the rim in about 2 seconds from the perimeter, like it was nothing, to just score easily in the final minutes of the game, with 20 seconds left in the game. He scored that 11 straight. He had a couple where he just backed down 80 all the way to the hoop easily. He can do that when he wants. He needs to, like, I'm not saying doing it all the time. He'll get exhausted for sure, but like, maybe pull that card a little bit more, especially against 6'3" Rajon Rondo. Why are you so passive? He was making me pretty angry last night, or 2 nights ago, just because of all those types of plays. And really looking for the pass so often that he was forcing the issue passing-wise and threw 5 turnovers, which is very bad for him. And let's not act like that's like some egregious amount. LeBron gets 5 turnovers like literally every other playoff game. He had 6 2 nights ago. So, it's just for Jokic, who usually has such a low turnover rate, that's pretty high, and not what you want to see. But Jokic was, he was still one of the better players on the floor last night, or 2 nights ago. Sorry, I keep saying last night, but the thing was, he just wasn't aggressive enough. He only took 14 shots. He needs to be taking more than that. He played JaVale McGee off the floor in the first 8 minutes. JaVale never got back in the game. He played the first 8 minutes of the game, never came back in because of how easily Jokic was scoring on him. He scored 11 of his 22 in the first quarter, in those first 8 minutes. And then after that, he just kind of, which is kind of a pattern for Jokic. Some games he'll come out really aggressively right out the blocks in the first quarter, and then he'll just coast all like the rest of the game until the final minutes when we need baskets. Then he'll like decide to start scoring again. I don't really understand that. Maybe, I don't know if it's conserving energy or what's going on, but I'd like to see less of that and more of just kind of constant looking for baskets for him. At least pretty like semi-often. So, yeah. But in the first quarter, like I said, yeah, he ran JaVale McGee off the floor, and then when they decided to put in Dwight only played 14 minutes and got 4 fouls. He was trying too hard, trying to get in Jokic's head, trying to be really physical with him, which was working in the first 2 games just because Jokic was kind of being physical back, and he picked up a lot of fouls in situations where Dwight kind of sold contact and stuff like that. Dwight was just trying to get him to play along and kind of go along with him and keep pushing, but back and forth and stuff. In this game, Jokic was like, just go away. I don't want you around me. Like, was kind of just ignoring him, and Dwight just kept escalating it more and more, trying to get Jokic to do something, and then Dwight would just do something where that was very obviously a foul and got the ref's attention. So he got 4 fouls in 14 minutes. So good job, Dwight. He only got 1 rebound, and so did JaVale. He only had 1, and then Anthony Davis only had 2. So all of the Lakers bigs combined for 4 rebounds 2 nights ago. So that's kind of weird, but whatever. I don't know what that was about. I don't think that's going to continue, but I guess that was a good break for the Nuggets. And then, obviously Jeremy Grant and Jamal Murray both had really good games. I guess I'll stop talking about Jokic, really. I mean, other than the fact that Jokic is a really good player, and I hear, casual fans, let's not say plural, because like I have a friend that I remember he said like a year ago at one point, we were kind of having a discussion about how maybe the Nuggets could win a championship in the coming seasons, like they have a championship window and stuff like that. I think it was really after they got eliminated in the playoffs last season. And this is a guy that doesn't pay attention to the regular season, and he starts paying attention in the playoffs. But he thinks he knows what he's talking about. Like, that's really what I've been talking about this whole time, is casual fans who like say things and they think they know what they're talking about when they really don't. And he said something along the lines of like, Nuggets aren't ever going to win a championship with the roster they have. They don't have a star. They don't have a superstar. And I was like, well, they have Nikola Jokic. And then he was like, well, yeah, but he's not like a LeBron or an AD level. I was like, well, I mean, he did just finish over them in MVP voting, both of them this season. So, I mean, there's that. I'm not saying he's a better player than them or even that he's as good as them, but he is a superstar level player. He's a player that I believe you can build a championship team around. He has all the tools to be that level of player. So that, I just don't agree with that statement at all. And I think, honestly, I just don't like it when people just don't give enough respect to Jokic. He's a very good player. I think a lot of people kind of just think of him as like, oh, he's a cute player because he's big and weird looking and makes crazy passes and he makes weird shots sometimes. But what else is he giving you? He's giving you a lot. He's a very smart player. He's probably the hardest player in the league to double. Really should be the best player in the league to use against the zone, which this is the most playoff teams in the NBA have used zone in like forever. And the Lakers used it 2 nights ago, somehow successfully, to kind of come back and cut the lead to like 2, which was making me really stressed out. But it should be a really simple plan to like break up or pick apart the zone defense when you have Nikola Jokic on your team. Just put him like this is every level of basketball understands this. When you're playing against a zone defense, you put a passing big or like a playmaker in the center of the floor, like at the free throw line, really, and have him make the proper passes to make the defense rotate in a way that you're going to get an open look. And you can do that lots of ways. Like you can get backdoor cuts really easily in situations like that. And I don't know why we didn't go to that. So the reason why the Celtics are struggling with it so much is because they don't have that. They don't have a Jokic. They have Daniel Tice, who's really not that. He's like a sneaky good playmaker, but they just haven't been able to really pick it apart yet. I'd say Marcus Smart is probably another really good option that they haven't really gone too much in there. Even though he's not big, he's like a nice playmaker and he's pretty solid. Can't be moved very easily. But yeah, whatever. But yeah, Jokic is a very good player. I'm sure, you're going to see lists and stuff after the season talking about who the best 10 players in the NBA are. And I'm sure he's going to be, for sure, pretty well in that, probably in like the 5 to 8 range. But yeah. And then I guess I didn't really get done talking about the Celtics and Heat series Like Marcus Smart had a pretty good game. He had 10 points, 11 assists. He didn't shoot well. He was 3 for 12, which is a pretty coming back down to earth type of game for Marcus Smart's shooting, because that's more of a smarty, box score, 3 for 12, as opposed to him hitting like all these shots that he has been the last couple weeks. So yeah, that's it was kind of due for that type of game. Gordon Hayward, who just had his son the other day, he had 14.7 rebounds, 3 assists. He ended up with not a bad game. He was missing some pretty bad shots early on, but he started making them later in the game, and he provides a lot for them coming back. And because this Celtics team has a really good top 5 with Gordon Hayward in there, and I'd say Daniel Tice probably makes it 6. Situationally, Daniel Tice can be a really good player too, but it really drops off a cliff after that. Really, after their top 5 best players, they don't want to be playing Brad Wanamaker and Shemi Ojale, and whoever else would be coming in, Romeo Langford or I don't know, whatever. They don't want to be playing them very many minutes. The more minutes on the floor they don't have to play those guys, probably the better. And Gordon Hayward really provides that for them and gives them another ball handling option and playmaking option. Not a bad shooter on the catch and shoot, even though he wasn't that great last night. But he's coming off an injury and not playing for quite a while. But so it was good to see Gordon Hayward have a pretty decent game. Iguodala had 3 points for the Heat. It was weird. He shot all of his shots from 3. He shot 1 of 4 from 3, and that was all of his shots from the field, which Iggy is not a 3-point shooter by any means. Pretty looked at as a pretty poor 3-point shooter for his entire career, so that's kind of weird. But yeah, just thought I would mention that too. But with the Denver and LA series, with that game 3, I was pretty nervous the whole time just because we were up by like 15, and I know that Nuggets, they don't do well with leads, like keeping leads. We do well when we're down, coming back from deficits, but not keeping the lead for some reason. But so I was pretty nervous about it. And yeah, they cut it to 2 at one point with like 4 minutes left, I want to say. And so that was pretty scary, but thankfully we did get away with it. Like I said, there are things I want to change. Like Lakers, the refs were, I would say, making some pretty iffy calls down the stretch. A lot of them seemed to really favor the Lakers, but I don't know. And in game 1, there's a lot of those. So I don't know about that. But like I said, I wish Jokic would have been more aggressive down the stretch. Also, another thing, casual fans not knowing that his Sombor shuffle shot, the one where he will back off and he'll fade away and shoot off 1 foot. That's a very effective shot for him. The times he takes it is really when the shot clock is winding down and he has the ball out on an island around the perimeter, and he'll just fall into that shot. People are acting like he's making the shot harder for himself. No, he practices that shot all the time. It's much better than him shooting a set shot over the best rim protector, the best shot blocker in the NBA, inside as well as out on the perimeter, in Anthony Davis. So I'd take that shot over a set jump shot over AD any day. And I feel kind of mean now talking so much about casual fans, but one thing I just wanted to say really quick, like, I kind of view it for me a little bit like how I'm like a casual fan of football, of NFL. I don't pay attention to it like hardly at all. I'll watch the Super Bowl and stuff like that, but and I'll talk to my friends about it sometimes. But I'd like to say anyways, I don't feel like I ever have a formed opinion or like say things about NFL to like my friends or people that watch the NFL. Like I know something. I never do that. When maybe you could probably even see the evidence for yourself, like listening to last episode that I did with Jacob when he's talking about the NFL and I'm saying things. I question things. Like I'm like, oh, I saw this happened, or I heard about this. Is this like this guy's storyline right now, or is this guy good at this right now, or like what is what does this certain thing mean, and what's your perception of this guy? Like, how good of a guy is he? How does that compare to a guy in the NBA that I can like see, kind of gauge it by? Like I do stuff like that all the time because I don't assume to know anything about the NFL because I don't watch it. And I'm always running stuff by Jacob because he knows about the NFL. I don't. I'd like to learn more about it, and that's why I ask questions and stuff. But I don't assume to know anything ever, like talking to him. So, yeah, I guess that's the thing that annoys me. Not people being casual fans of the NBA, but casual fans who come into it and like say things, like make declarations of things. And have fully formed opinions that like they'll argue over when they don't have any idea of like what they're talking about, just simply because they haven't been watching the game all season long, and previous seasons and being around it. That like I'm listening to, thinking about, watching NBA basketball literally every day. So I'd like to think that I have a pretty decent amount of knowledge about it, and I do have fully formed opinions. And I guess not. I guess I would consider myself never to have an actual fully formed opinion. Like my opinion can always change based off of like new evidence and stuff. For sure. I have a very scientific like way of thinking about it. I guess I don't want to sound. I don't know. I sound kind of braggy right now, but I don't really want to. I just kind of want to explain my thinking a bit, but. Yeah, I guess that was just a little bit of a rant about, people, watching basketball games in the playoffs. And I don't know if anybody else is frustrated by that stuff, but I am just sometimes like watching games because a lot of times, like I'm pretty ADHD for anybody who doesn't know. So I like it when like my friends ask me questions about stuff that's happening in the games, but that makes me really excited and want to talk about that stuff because like I never get to talk about my basketball to a lot of my friends, so I want to do it. So I'll go in on it, but then I'm also like regretting it because like I was like I want to watch the game, and me being really ADHD, I cannot talk, like have an actual discussion with somebody that I'm putting thought into and pay attention to anything else at all. Like I have no idea of what's going on around me. Like somebody can walk up to me while I'm having a discussion that I'm invested in and can like hand me something or take something from me or like, do something like that. And me kind of subconsciously or like on autopilot, I'll like, interact with that person in the way that like they're handing me something or, or things like that. But I won't remember it at all. I won't even understand that it happened. Like afterwards, after I'm done talking, I'll like look down and I have like a spoon in my hand. I'm like, I have no recollection of where that came from. And so, I guess you could see how watching a basketball game would be difficult with that because then I have no idea what happened the past however long. I was completely zoned out because I'm focusing like that. I mean that's really what a lot of what ADHD is. Like you're just hyper focused on certain things and everything else is a blur. So yeah, I guess I didn't really need to go into all of that, but yeah, so I'm glad that we got one. Like I said, I think that this is going to be a pretty good series, Lakers and Nuggets. Another thing, since we're just, this is the casual fan episode, another thing that's probably a perception of people is that Lakers are like the clear best team left in the bubble, which I would say, yeah, they're probably the favorite, and rightly so. But they're really not like that much better than all like these other teams. They're not like a team that's going to destroy any of these teams. Like all the teams left are very good. This isn't a fluke year of like teams ending up where like Denver upsetting the Clippers is really not that big of an upset. The way it was an upset was that we came back from 3-1 and we weren't playing very well and we were missing Will Barton, but we weren't playing well at the beginning of the series and things like that. And the Clippers just kind of playing really terribly down the stretch of those last games. Like that's the way that it happened. That was a surprise. Like obviously Clippers are definitely favored in a series against the Nuggets, but if the Nuggets were to win, that's really not that crazy of an upset. They're the 3 seed. Like, and and had I think 1 or 2 less wins during the season than they did. And Nuggets were really fighting for the first spot for most of the season with the Lakers until the Clippers decided to start playing towards after the All-Star break, really. So yeah, that's another, I think, common misconception is that the Lakers are somehow going to stomp every team that's left because they're that much better than everybody, when they're really not. I think people, just are I know who LeBron James is, I know who Anthony Davis is, I know they're both really good. So they just look at that. But the supporting cast of the Lakers is by far the worst. the I'd say players 3 through 12 is by far the worst on the Lakers versus any other of the 4 teams. I'd say Celtics are probably second worst in that department, just because the Celtics are so top 5 heavy, like I've talked about. And then the Nuggets and Heat are both 2 of the deepest teams in the league. They have lots of guys that they can roll out there, just not as top heavy, especially the Heat. Heat are not near as top heavy as other teams. They're really kind of evenly spread with talent. Nuggets are pretty evenly spread as well, except for when you're talking about offensively speaking, like scoring wise. Jokic and Murray are really the main scorers, besides MPJ, without Will Barton in there. Will Barton is typically our third option on offense, and he's a very good third option, but he has not been here. So we've had to rely on rookie Michael Porter Jr. that it seems like the whole team, well, not the whole team, but Michael Malone is not supporting, doesn't really want him to be taking shots, but he is, because he is that type of player. He hit a really big 3 over LeBron the other night. He just has such a high release that it's so hard to defend. He was 4 for 6. He had a good game. I think he needs more Millsap minutes, because Millsap did not have a good game. Really terrible. And he's been pretty awful the whole playoffs. He's had some good veteran moments, but that's just, I feel like broadcasters, since they like Paul Millsap so much because he's a veteran and they know him, like Chris Webber, or people they have a history with him because they know him as a player. So they're using kind of confirmation bias in the way that they're seeing him impact the game well in some stretches, which every NBA player can, because that's why they're in the NBA. And they're like, oh, see, he is, he's still good. He's still, providing all this, all that, but not looking at how much of a drop off it is offensively speaking when we have him in there over Michael Porter Jr. Also, Paul Millsap is a very slow defender now. And MPJ is getting better every game, really, defensively, which should have been happening during the regular season, but that's another point. And yeah, MPJ is much quicker and more athletic. Paul Millsap is a much smarter defender, so that's really what you're looking at. Millsap, I would say, is definitely the better defender right now, but he's been complete garbage on offense. I'm just going to say it. 2 nights ago, he completely fumbled 4 layups that he should have had, where Jokic gave him a pass right next to the rim 4 times. I'm pretty sure it was 4, but Paul Millsap either missed the layup or dropped it out of bounds or got it deflected or just gave up the play, really, in one of those kinds of ways. So that was not fun to see. And 2 of them happened down the stretch where Lakers really made that comeback when they had went in zone and made that cut the lead down to 2. So yeah, there's all that. But yeah, I think I'm going to be done with both of these series, just talking about them, just because I've been doing it too much. LeBron had a good game. AD had a good game. You can go look at the box scores if you want to. Just because I'm kind of short on time. But another thing I should probably mention, though, LeBron and AD pick and roll. They finally decided to start doing it this series a little bit, which has not been fun because it's obviously pretty unstoppable. So I might talk about that later, maybe with Jacob in another episode. But yeah, everything that I said about the series, I think I covered mostly everything. Monte Morris had really good minutes off the bench. He had 19 minutes, 14 points, 5 for 7. So yeah, he made good with his time that he had in there. Gary Harris has been awful offensively still. He's had a couple good games, but most of them have been really awful offensively. But I still want him in there just because of how much he provides defensively. So But in other news, I should probably touch on really quick. Bulls hired Billy Donovan, which I think is a good hire. I think he can do special things there. Don't really have too much to talk about there. But Tyronn Lue and Mike D'Antoni apparently lead the Sixers candidates for head coaching jobs. And apparently Luke Walton is going to return as the head coach of the Kings next season. So I guess that's coaching news. But one thing I want to dive into really quick before we end this episode is MVP voting, just because that's what was released. I kind of talked about it with Jacob on the last episode, but I kind of wanted to go through everybody that got votes and compare it to my MVP ladder that I made before. Where did this list go? Okay, so yeah, I'm just going to go through them really quick and compare it to where I had people placed. Giannis had 85 first place votes, 16 second place votes. So that's all 101 votes at either first or second. He won MVP. I had him at first. I think he was the obvious MVP. And LeBron got second with 16 first place votes, 84 second place votes, and 1 third place. So it was almost unanimous for the top two, but one guy voted him as third place. And I guess, LeBron had that quote that he was like mad about how he got only 16 out of the 101 votes, but he like even admitted that like Giannis should have won. That's kind of tough to be like, say that, this guy is clearly the guy that should win, but I feel like I should have got more first place votes. I feel like you can't say both those things. Like, you got a lot of second place votes. If you think you're clearly in the second place vote or in the second place, you can't get mad at how many first place votes you didn't get. People only have one first place vote. If it's clear that this guy's the MVP, he should get the votes. Even if it doesn't mean he had that much better of a season, it was just like a clear difference. That really can be the difference maker in voting. But yeah, and then James Harden got third. He had 1 second place, 64 third, 10 fourth, 10 fifth, which this is higher than I had him. I should mention, Giannis and LeBron, that's exactly where I had both of them, 1 and 2. But Harden I had at like 6. But I did predict that he would be anywhere from 3 to really 6 or 7. I was just lower on him than most people were, just because he had a really bad stretch towards the end of the season. That where, when they were winning a lot of games, he was not really playing like their best player. Like Russ was playing really as their best player when they started winning games. So I was like, it's kind of hard to vote him MVP for me. Those are really my reasons. But, James Harden's a hard player to gauge for me. So, and I am higher on him than other people are. I'm not, as big of a James Harden hater as a lot of other people are. But typically, I think, the numbers hunting is really what gets in the way with me a lot of times. But he is a very skilled offensive player. Obviously, probably the best isolation scorer in the league. It's just he can't really get it done in the playoffs. And yeah, and then so in fourth place there's Luka Doncic, where this is where I had Luka in the fourth spot. He got 14 third place, 36 fourth, and 22 fifth. This is a really good spot for Luka. Kawhi got fifth, which Kawhi's the one I had at 3 over Jim instead of James Harden. And he had 9 third place, 31 fourth, and 35th. Really, what gave the edge for Kawhi over Luka for me was that, offensively he was not far off from what Luka was generating offensively, like per 100 stats. And then Kawhi was clearly the better defender, and they both played the same amount of games. So the Clippers were much higher up in the standings. So it was kind of like, I feel like Kawhi should have got the edge a little bit, but that was a really tight discussion for me for a while in my head that I had between Luka and Kawhi, but that's why I decided on where I did. And then Anthony Davis got the 6th place of an MVP ladder. And I had him at 5th, and James Harden at 6th, where AD is now. But yeah, AD got 5 third place votes, 14 fourth, and 15 fifth. But yeah, good year from Anthony Davis. I feel like he probably would have got more votes if we did the polling now, just because of how good he's been in the postseason and how much people want to take back the Giannis MVP, just because of how kind of disappointing the Bucks were in the playoffs, but obviously it's a regular season award, and playoffs should not affect that at all. And it's not about who's the better player either. It's about who had the best regular season, who was like the most important to winning games, as opposed to other players around the league. And that's really what this award is. And that's why Giannis won it this year, because mathematically, and he had the best case. So yeah. And then there's Chris Paul. He got 7th, which I had Chris Paul at 9th on mine. He had 3 third place, 1 fourth place, and 8 fifth place. Dame came in 8th, which is where I had him. He had 1 third place, 4 third, or what did I say? Yeah, 1 third place, 4 fourth, and 6 fifth. Yeah, and then Jokic got 9th. Yeah, that's okay. So I had him at 7th on mine, and I gave a spread of where I think that he'd end up from, like anywhere from 5 to 9 range. So that is where kind of in the range that I said, but 9 I thought was kind of pushing it for me, just because I was not expecting Chris Paul and Dame to be put over him. Really just because, Denver had a much better season than both Oklahoma City and Portland did. Jokic, I think, was just more important to winning games than both Chris Paul and Damian Lillard were, this season, really. But I guess I don't mind it. I can see an argument for both of them going over him. So this was a really tough year. But it's just kind of also that, like, Jokic ended up 4th last year, and he had an even better season this year. So I thought he would be probably in the 5 to 7 range, really. But and I know multiple people, like people that I listen to, like Bill Simmons and Zach Lowe and people like that, gave him votes pretty high. Like, yeah, so he got 2 third place, 2 fourth place, and 2 fifth place. So I know a few of those people who made those votes. I'm pretty sure Bill Simmons put him 4th, and I listened to somebody else, I think, that put him 3rd. So, but yeah, not too many other people did, though. And I guess I wasn't really expecting that. But then Pascal Siakam got 10th, so he got 2 third place, 1 fourth place, and 4 fifth. And I had Pascal Siakam at 12th on mine MVP ladder. Jimmy Butler got 11th, and Jimmy's the one I had at 10th on mine. He had 2 fourth place and 3 fifth place. And then Jason Tatum was the only other player to get a vote, and he got 1 fifth place vote. So he ended up 12th. And I had Jason Tatum at 13th on mine. So 12 of the 13 that I had on the MVP ladder were the only 12 players in the league to get votes. So I think that's actually really good. The only person who didn't was the guy I had at number 11, which was Bradley Beal. And I did say in that podcast that I thought that Brad Beal was probably going to end up a bit lower on other people's ballots than mine, or on other people's ladders than mine, just because his team didn't win tons of games, but he was so important to all the wins that they got, and they overachieved so much too. Like, they outplayed with their talent this year, and I thought that he should deserve some recognition from that, and he had a really good offensive season this year. So I thought he kind of deserved to be in there in the 11 to 13 range. And I think he had a pretty good season as compared to like a Jason Tatum level season, but probably even higher. But it's just that Jason Tatum's team won a lot more games, and that's probably where that kind of tipped the scale. But yeah, so I think I'll be done with that, and with this podcast. Probably that's probably enough for this episode. If you liked it, please press like and follow the channel, subscribe and follow the Spotify feed. We're probably gonna record another episode with Jacob soon. We never really know, because his schedule is kind of hectic, and I don't really know when he's available. But I really like doing those. I think probably people listening probably do too, I would assume. But yeah, and they're less work too, because I can just have a really nice conversation with another person instead of having to think through all my thoughts here and like say them, and kind of like have these pauses where I'm like thinking about things, since I'm not actually talking to a person and I have to edit like stuff out. It takes longer to edit. When I do it with Jacob, I really just have much more of a conversation. I listen through it, cut out like background noises sometimes if I need to, and stuff like that. But really just listen through it once, and it's basically done. because there's hardly any editing that really needs to be done. And then I just upload it. It's so much easier, and also I think a better product when it's done. So I don't know why I said product. I'm not selling it, but like I guess what I mean is the end result, but outcome, I guess. But yeah, so thank you guys for listening, and I guess I'll talk to you guys next time.